The mid to late 90s was a hostile place for Sonic the Hedgehog. The franchise was born at the start of the decade in 1991 with the aim of propelling Sega up as a hardware manufacturer, competing directly with the monopoly that Nintendo had built up with Mario and the NES in the 1980s. Sonic the Hedgehog was a smash hit. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 came out just 1 year later and instantly became one of the most iconic games of its era and a defining game in its series. Sega wasted no time with this new franchise, making sure Sonic was a household name with merchandise, advertising, cartoons, spin-offs, and console bundles. The series hit a high in 1994 when Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles were released, one of the most epic 2D platformers the industry had ever seen. With Sonic the Hedgehog being so well positioned all over the globe, how could it go anywhere but up? Like I said, the mid to late 90s was not the spot for Sonic. The spin-off stopped being supplementary material and became the material. Attempts at a main game would end in cancellation like Sonic Extreme or flame out like Sonic 3D Blast just because the game wasn't very good. The entire Sega Saturn generation was left without a single Sonic game to consider its own to follow up upon what the Genesis games had started. Confidence in Sega as a company was at an all-time low after the Sega CD, the Sega 32X, and the Sega Saturn. But maybe, just maybe, this new Sonic game being murmured about will finally be the one. Be the game to bring it all back. Allow me to introduce the Sega Dreamcast, the 128-bit game console that dragged the gaming industry into the 21st century with style. Kicking off the 6th generation with a system capable of online play, progressive scan video with a VGA cable, and better graphics than what was ever seen before. And what was one of its launch titles in 1998 in Japan and in the US in 1999? Sonic Adventure. The franchise's proper leap into the third dimension. Buckle up, and we're talking 5-point harness, because Sonic Adventure will propel your Dreamcast into warp speed 3D action. Talking about 3D Sonic games on YouTube is the greatest dead horse you could possibly beat, but I can't not talk about games that were so essential in my gaming history, now can I? Talking about how over-reviewed Sonic Adventure is a cliche in and of itself. This game has just been talked into the ground. How well it's aged, is it better or worse than the classics that preceded it? What is Sonic Adventure like from the perspective of someone who looks at this era of Sonic and thinks it's the franchise at its best? Did the internet turn on the adventure games in the 2010s? And so on. It's all been said, so really I have no real big revelation to give the audience. I'm just here to give my opinion on Sonic Adventure as a part of my ongoing retrospective about how Sonic the Hedgehog was once a boundary-breaking series that has fallen short of its created intentions. So, without further ado, let's see how Sonic Adventure played a part in that legacy. Every single Sonic game prior to this one featured a level-by-level structure. While games like Knuckles' Chaotix will have a little area between levels, some games might show progression on a world map like the 8-bit version of Sonic 1, and a game like Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles would connect each of its stages through cutscenes. The point is that there wasn't much in terms of breaks in the action. Sonic Adventure, in addition to being the brand new Sonic game finally bringing the gameplay to the third dimension, it also was meant to be a tech demo for the Dreamcast itself. We'll see how they went about this in numerous ways before the video is over, but one of them was how Sonic Adventure was meant to feel more like, well, an adventure. The game boasts a roster of 6 playable characters, each with their own campaign a la Sonic 3 and Knuckles, with their own perspectives in the story. And when not going through their respective stages, the characters will get from place to place via the 3 adventure fields. Hub areas and hub worlds segregating content in a 3D platformer was certainly not something lost on 3D platformers from the 5th generation of consoles, but like I said, Sonic Adventure wanted to feel more real and immersive. When Princess Peach's castle in Super Mario 64, or the level gates of Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon will warp you to another location far removed from the one you were just in, here in Sonic Adventure's main setting, Station Square, the hotel has a pool in the back and that leads to the beach, and then you have the beach level Emerald Coast. The casino is in the back part of the city, and then you have a casino stage. Going slightly outside the city takes you to Speed Highway. Twinkle Park is located right across the street from the hotel. The train takes you to the Mystic Ruins, which has its own levels and areas. Dr. Eggman's floating masterpiece, the Egg Carrier, is a hub area in and of itself, and when it crashes down, you can revisit it by boat from Station Square or the Mystic Ruins. Expanding the play area like this could lead to confusion, so the developers have a couple ways to combat this in mind. When starting the game as Sonic, the only character unlocked at the start, you're immediately directed towards Emerald Coast, and coming from there, he and Tails agree to go to the Mystic Ruins by train. While you can run around Station Square to a small extent, the market area in the back of town is gated off because of a monster sighting the previous day, which was the inciting incident of Sonic's story. This area is blocked off to keep you from getting lost or distracted from the main goal, but everything that happens in Sonic Adventure's world is thought out and given an in-universe explanation. Like when Sonic and Tails get separated, Sonic is stuck dealing with Amy in Station Square, and Tails is stuck in the Mystic Ruins, and they couldn't get to each other if they wanted to because the train is shut down due to the workers' strike going on at the moment. Like, this game is not Zelda Majora's Mask by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like what they did in this world is cool. Like how Sonic and Tails got knocked out by Eggman at one point in their stories, and in Knuckles' story you pass by the unconscious Sonic and Tails before going to Casinopolis to do his mission there. Or how Big and Gamma are in Emerald Coast at the same time, and the NPC will remark that Gamma's now the second person looking for a frog at the beach. So yeah, I love the world in this game. If you do get lost, these floating red hint bubbles will always give you a direction on where to go next. And if it has been a while since you last played, resuming any character's story will show a recap as that character reminisces on what's happened thus far in the story and what they intend to do next. All of these aren't written well enough to not feel like exposition, but it gets the job done. Ignoring roadblocks, hint bubbles, and recaps, I feel like the adventure fields themselves do a really good job getting familiar with the layout. I mean, the hubs of Sonic Adventure pale in comparison to the sizes of the ones in Sly 2, which was only released 6 years after Adventure 1. So by today's standards, the 3 hubs of this game are very small, but still, for 1998, I think they still bothered to put enough thought into this that makes these areas memorable. Like how Tails' workshop is such a major landmark at the Mystic Ruins, or how taking the sidewalk from the hotel in Station Square leads to the market in the back, or how the back of the hotel leads to the casino. The only time the design might fail the player would be in the jungle, where I feel like the intention was for the player to get lost, as to feel like a big jungle, as these explorers are wandering around the paths you'll be traveling on here. As Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, I don't mind the movement speed. With the other characters though, it gets annoying, but in newer releases of the game, each hub area has a map in the pause menu with notable landmarks listed on it, so directions shouldn't be an issue. With that out of the way, let's discuss Sonic's campaign.
Let's get him!
In the 22 years since this game first released, I'd say there's been 3 major cracks at how to control Sonic in 3D. The Sonic Adventure formula, which for simplicity's sake, let's say that spans from this game to Sonic 06, the boost gameplay in Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations, and Sonic Forces, and then Sonic Lost World on its own island. As someone who's very familiar with each of these styles, seeing the merits and drawbacks that can come from each, and just having spent a lot of time focusing on those first 4 iconic Sonic games in the Genesis era video, I can say with confidence that I think the best 3D Sonic, as far as being a faithful recreation of the Genesis formula, is Sonic Adventure, hands down. When just looking at the gameplay, what made Sonic 1 through 3 and Knuckles so great was that the mechanics were like nothing ever seen before. Sonic's momentum-based physics system allowed the designers to create levels that Mario or Mega Man could only dream of, like having enough speed to just jump to different platforms in Green Hill Zone, or Marble Zone, Chemical Plant Zone, Collision Chaos, or Ice Cap. It was endlessly rewarding and replayable. Sonic Adventure nails this to a T, with what I feel is the most open-ended 3D Sonic level design ever created to date, which first stems from the fact that the game's level design is just littered with different pathways to explore that reward your sense of discovery with item boxes and such. But with the spin dash that has changed from needing to be stopped and holding down and mashing the jump button to just being something Sonic can do on a dime with the press of a button, you can go flying on an incline and skip massive parts of stages, some intentional and some not. Like in Sonic's first stage, Emerald Coast, you can come up to the boardwalk and save a couple seconds by spin dash jumping to the upper level without having to walk there, or skipping past a big chunk at the end of the stage by spin dash jumping to the area that the path forward would have taken you to. My favorite example of this coming in Ice Cap in Lost World, as in the former you can enter the cave and skip the entire part where you climb past icicles and just jump to where that portion of the stage is ended. The same in Lost World in the Snake Room, and this final room with the wall walking. Not every stage is perfect, as Skydeck is a bit jank to play, but still fun in my opinion, and Windy Valley is a bit too straightforward in the final product, running through straight pathways by the end. Which seriously begs the question of why they scrapped the beta version of Windy Valley, as modders have restored this stage, and I thought it was light years better than the final product, as each section has multiple pathways for you to explore, making each revisit of the stage fun. The perfect 3D Sonic level, and it even functions pretty well with Gamma and Tails. But on the whole, Sonic's gameplay in Sonic Adventure is so good that the 10 stages you get as him are just endlessly replayable, or dare I say, even more so than any of the classics that preceded it. And I think it's very fair to compare the two. For early 3D transition games, a common occurrence was switching up the gameplay style, as the technology of the late 90s was not there to make a game like Super Mario World work in 3D, a straightforward platformer with an emphasis on obstacle avoidance. When Crash Bandicoot did that on PS1, the games were basically the same as a 2D game just with a 3D camera. So Mario 64 designed a couple of stages and changed the objective to be exploring these maps to find stars and coins as to still be a satisfactory length. Mega Man Legends has always gotten flack for not being a faithful transition of the tried and true 2D gameplay, however this completely ignores the fact that the game isn't even a part of the classic Mega Man series, and thus was never intended to be that in the first place. But here in Sonic Adventure, I think Sonic Team was able to capture the magic of the classic Sonic games without coming at the cost of the game, as the objective is as simple and clear-cut as any of the 2D games. To top it all off, on their first attempt, they nailed the controls. As I said, a staple of 2D Sonic was that when he went downhill, he would pick up speed and be able to do things other characters would just not be able to. With infinitely more axes to work with, they pulled it off with flying colors. Sonic naturally increases and decreases in speed when going up and down hills, his turning feels just right, and with that you have the best Sonic has ever played in 3D, and on their first try no less. But that's not to imply it's perfect. A persistent problem in Sonic Adventure and pretty much every 3D Sonic game is the camera. It will sometimes just feel unresponsive and get in the way. But to be honest, not in a way where I noticed it or complain about it in much detail. But it does exist, and I figured it was worth a mention. Really, to play Sonic Adventure, you just need to go forward. The camera rarely needs to come into play, in my opinion. The idea of a free camera was new enough when this game first came out that an early NPC tells you not to worry about shifting camera perspectives and to just go forward. Anyway, a new staple mechanic in Sonic Adventure is the homing attack, which receives flack for adding too much automation to attacking enemies that was not present in the 2D games, although I don't mind. 2D and 3D are fundamentally different, and some things that work in 2D games just don't in 3D. The homing attack allows Sonic to just target his enemies without the player having to worry about whether or not it's going to work. An excellent reason for the homing attack to exist is actually shown off in 1996's Sonic 3D Blast. I gave that game scorn for its abysmal perspective, and while the game is not real 3D, it proves the point. Hitting enemies was a pain without the homing attack shield, showing how needed the mechanic truly was to keep the flow going in a satisfactory manner in a 3D space. So that's my piece on how Sonic plays, and I think they did a fantastic job there. How about the story? In Sonic 1, 2, CD, and 3K, the stakes were ramped up each and every time. An extra effort the developers put in to make Sonic stand out back in that era. Sonic Adventure certainly keeps this trend going. Sonic's story begins as he's faced off with the new menace, Chaos, the water god of destruction, as being led by Dr. Eggman, as the ancient prophecy has foretold that if Chaos gets his hand on a Chaos Emerald, he'll evolve in strength. So instead of trying another Death Egg scheme, Dr. Robotnik is going to unleash the powers of Chaos, and when the world is in ruins, he'll build Robotnik Land, the ultimate city, where he will rule it all. Sonic and Tails wanting to put a stop to this, setting up the journey. Now, I don't actually have a lot to say about Sonic's story itself, because Sonic remains consistent throughout. He wants to help people and stop the bad guy, which is where his character is at in every game. So I guess they get points for consistency. I've always found Sonic to be an endearing character, and games like this are the reason why. Like, Sonic is a perfect example of 90s cool, but he's not an arrogant character. He's pretty laid back and uses his abilities to fight against injustice, actually caring about what's going on around him. Thinking Dr. Eggman's plan needs to be stopped. And when Sonic's given flashbacks to the backstory of Chaos, I just love the way he acts in the moment here, despite being in a completely different location from the one he was just in.
This place, it looks familiar. It's not a dream after all. Hey, are you all right?
I think so.
On the opposing side, we have Dr. Eggman and Chaos, who I can get back to much later. Dr. Eggman was always such a great antagonist in the classic games because of how hands-on he was in comparison to a Bowser or a Dr. Wily. In Sonic Adventure, this is no different, as he's the main cause of grief for almost every single character. With this game showing off different sides of Robotnik that early games couldn't, like how he's a pretty cunning villain. For example, he dramatically announces his intention to gather the Chaos Emeralds to Sonic and Tails so that they'll go looking for them for him, and then he can just steal the emeralds from them once they've done the work of looking for them. Or how in Gamma's story we get to see Dr. Eggman in a position of authority and see how he's the kind of villain who will expel his forces for not living up to his plans. He's a bad dude, but he's endlessly entertaining with the egg-based iconography and his grandiose speeches, such as,
"You, the elite egg carrier crew, are here today to hear a very special announcement. Behold, it's a tailed frog! Very unique."
The egg carrier in general is such a fantastic display of personality. I mean, Eggman has this flying fortress all to himself, and he built himself a pool area with his face on it, a giant diving board and a crew of robot maids, and a Sonic-themed whack-a-mole game where you lose points for hitting Eggman and gain points for hitting Sonic, and bonus points if it's the lightning-fast Super Sonic. Instead of just sending a Death Egg squad when Amy escapes, for example, she has to beat his high score on the game, and he's flabbergasted when his crappy score is beaten.
What? I can't believe this is happening!
The classic Eggman has always had a lot of this going for him, but it cannot be displayed in-game as loud and proud as Sonic Adventure does. Also, I remind the audience, going back to the first Sonic game, Dr. Eggman has always had that name in Japan, but the Western team changed it to Dr. Robotnik, because they thought that sounded cooler. In this game, it's now canon that his name is Dr. Ivo Robotnik. In Sonic Adventure 2, we'll solidify that, but Dr. Eggman is a nickname that Sonic and company have for him, and as of SA2, he just starts calling himself that. I guess he thought that was a cool villain name, like the Eggman Empire has a nice ring to it, I guess. Now let's talk about Tails' campaign.
Here I come, Sonic!
This is the first time in a main series Sonic game where we have a canon Tails playthrough, as in Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, the canon versions of events was that Tails just followed Sonic's lead, and while you could play as him in his own version of the story, this never actually happened. So at the start of Tails' campaign, you realize that it's the same as Sonic's, like when Sonic finds Tails in Emerald Coast, you begin there and follow Sonic around. I mentioned before, there's one story in Sonic Adventure, but each of the 6 characters have their own perspectives on the events that transpire. Like when Sonic and Amy see each other in Station Square, Sonic's version of this is that he begrudgingly lets Amy tag along, but Amy's version is that Sonic just flat out says no to hanging out with her and she has to follow him around. The biggest example of change comes when Tails clearly perceives Dr. Eggman to be much more menacing than Sonic does, but I'll pump the brakes on that discussion of the story and look at Tails as a playable character. Sonic 3 and Knuckles gained so much replay value from the 4 total campaigns the game offered. The level design in that game fairly accommodated for having 3 playable characters. Sonic being the fastest and being able to take full advantage of the shield power-ups, Tails being able to fly and discover hidden routes the easiest, and Knuckles being able to get to different areas the others couldn't. Tails being able to fly over stages and Knuckles gliding and climbing walls are aspects that are fundamental to their characters, and so the 3D transition needs to have that in, or something is greatly lost. Everything great I said about the controls and gameplay of Sonic does carry over to Tails and Knuckles, but at a cost. Like, Tails and Knuckles both go really fast, control really well, have their unique abilities while still being able to roll into a ball and cover great distances. With that, however, this is where we see that 3D and 2D are just not the same thing. While yes, Sonic 3 and Knuckles' level design is brimming with life and detail, it ultimately is a giant 2D square that the designers are working with. As established, 3D brings in infinitely more directions into the mix, and thus, Tails flying completely breaks the game in two. Check out this run of Windy Valley as Tails, a level that took a couple minutes to beat as Sonic himself.
Come on, Tails! Yeah! You made it!
Wasn't too bad.
To combat this, they gave Tails and Knuckles different stage objectives to make the game more substantive as them. For Tails, they came up with the idea of each stage being a race between Sonic and Tails that you have to win, and then for Tails' last stage, Speed Highway, he faces off against Dr. Eggman. This fix did not work out though, because frankly, I think Tails' campaign is the second worst in the game. Making each stage a race does not fix the problem of stages being easily broken by a character that can fly over everything. Sonic and Eggman stand no chance of beating you unless you intentionally throw, as Sonic and Eggman's AIs only go on a set path on the ground, while you take advantage of the sky to completely wipe the floor with the competition in under a minute for each and every stage. If you ever wondered why Sega doesn't just try to make Sonic 3K but in 3D, well, that's because they need to design entirely new stages for Tails so that he can't do exactly what we're seeing here. Tails controls well, but everything else about his gameplay is a shallow bust, simply because of what his character was created to be. Tails' campaign doesn't suck for those reasons alone, though. His levels are not that fun to play, but Tails is at least a character you can enjoy taking control of. The real problem with Tails' story is the pace. The first portion is the same as Sonic's, just with these lame stages, but then the middle portion, where significant plot development takes place, is the worst. Tails must fight Chaos 4, one of the worst bosses in the game, play through Sky Chase Act 1, the Sand Hill minigame, and then Sky Chase Act 2. The worst part of Sonic's story were the 2 Sky Chase levels, these boring as all hell moments where you just sit there as Sonic and Tails flying towards the egg carrier, barely requiring any interaction from the player. There is nothing to be gained from getting a high score, the music's kind of droning, and the mechanics of shooting enemies in the tornado isn't that fun in and of itself. It's just a terrible pace breaker, but Tails has to play the exact same minigame twice in his story with no alteration, making it even more boring. This portion of Tails' story is such a significant chunk of nothing that it makes me want to put the controller down whenever we get to it. But I just mentioned the boss fight against Chaos 4, as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles were all present for that, so we must fight this tiresome boss fight where you stand around doing nothing for 5 straight cycles 3 times. It takes over 2 minutes and there is nothing you can do to speed it up. In the classics, the bosses were awful, but with the right strategy they can be cleared in no time. In Sonic Adventure, this is hardly the case, as most bosses that can't be cleared in a couple seconds last for an eternity, like the Egg Viper, the Egg Walker, and Chaos 4. But that's enough negativity for right now, let's talk about the story. Tails actually goes through an arc in this game, as he starts the game out as Sonic's sidekick, but when they get separated and Sonic goes on his adventure with Amy, Tails winds up alone and has to find another Chaos Emerald for himself, and realizes that ever since he's first started hanging out with Sonic in Sonic 2, he hasn't done much for himself, and he knows he has to come into his own at some point, building the Tornado 2, replacing the plane that got destroyed earlier, and helping Sonic board the egg carrier, proving himself once again as an irreplaceable friend to Sonic. But they get separated again when Sonic ends up exploring Lost World in his campaign while Eggman's about to destroy Station Square with a missile, as Tails has to shut it down himself, that being the moment to come into his own that he knew was coming earlier. A clear-cut story of gaining confidence and stepping out of your elder's shadow. For that reason, I think Tails' campaign has an effective story, but of course, that brings us to the cutscenes and presentation. Sonic Adventure is infamous at this point for mediocre voice acting and god-awful cutscenes. Now, how accurate do I think these claims are? Well, that depends. The voice acting is certainly not a zero-sum game. The acting in this game is no Metal Gear Solid, and while Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon have the edge over this game, those games don't have nearly the amount of story that Sonic Adventure does. And MGS was the exception to the voice acting rule, and the cutscenes in that game were god-awful and made no attempt to lip-sync and presented most of the information in boring codec calls. Now, MGS wins out for its excellent cutscene pacing and scoring, but still. You can poke fun at all the bad line delivery that crops up.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
Where I think the acting is certainly well above passable for the majority of it, certainly well above the bottom of the barrel for the era, like Mega Man X4 or something, which comes from voices I think are fitting for the characters. I feel like the people casting this game just took the art of the characters and just got a voice that would fit what the brand was known for in both English and Japanese, like Ryan Drummond as Sonic, Jennifer Dooleyard as Amy, the guy who did Knuckles in this game was fine, I thought, and most importantly, Dean Bristow as Dr. Eggman. May the man rest in peace, he kicked ass in this game. I went into how I thought Eggman had multiple sides to his character in this one, and this voice just nails it. But when there is a bad line, it's a really bad line, or a bad actor. Tails' whole character arc is stained by the fact that I think his voice is nails on a chalkboard in this game.
So what do you say, Sonic? Let's find the Chaos Emeralds before Eggman does. Now the emerald count is 2-1 and Eggman's winning. Let's get a move on. It's changing again. We gotta stop this fast. That's Eggman. I wonder what happened to Sonic.
But I am able to look at the intentions above the final product. These cutscenes have been infamous for God knows how long, and awful lip sync has a lot to do with that. However, I thought about this. I can live with the characters cycling through crappy pre-made animations as a result of limited technology. The Sly Cooper trilogy is one of my favorites in gaming, and most people who watch me must know that by now. Sly 2 and 3 are especially obvious how they just cycle through the same animations again and again and again and again. But the main difference between Sly and Sonic Adventure would first be that Sly's acting stays consistently great from top to bottom, but more importantly, the people creating the stories in Sly Cooper had a much better grasp on pacing and editing.
Good job, little buddy. That was some fast thinking.
Don't forget about me!
You did a great job opening that door, Murray.
Thanks!
The cutscenes in Sonic Adventure suffer so much because of these awkward spaces between lines.
Hey, Sonic. Long time no see, huh?
I'm just glad you're okay. What happened anyway? You're too good of a pilot to just crash like that.
That was a test run using a new prototype propulsion system.
Or these giant spaces of nothing.
I wonder what he meant by that.
The editing is also seemingly careless, like how the music keeps resetting when cutscenes start. Or at the end of Tails' story, how his theme plays when he wins over Eggman, cut to black, his theme starts again when he sees Sonic, his story ends, and his theme begins again when the credits roll. That's what I thought were the biggest mistakes of this game's story presentation. These factors all combine into one ugly package. However, the pacing of lines and editing of scenes is the most glaring and awful part in my opinion. as it kills what could have been good scenes. My favorite example being the scenes where Eggman swipes the emeralds from Sonic and Tails, as the animators don't have the tools for convincing cutscene animation, so we get these really awkward moments where the heroes just come off like bumbling idiots, not just grabbing the emeralds with the infinite time they have. Another bad offender being how the same cutscenes play in each character's story whenever they're all together. Yes, the dialogue is always slightly different, but the scene where Sonic, Tails, and Amy are met with E102 Gamma plays 4 times, and it's almost the exact same scene all 4 times. But while I know this next point will be totally predictable coming from an adventure era fan, I can't help but love the story anyway. The people making the cutscenes might have been limited by the technology and experience with the hardware, or experience with directing cinematics, but I think that their commitment to telling this grand story, the kind of platformer I had never seen before Sonic Adventure, is just so commendable that I love it anyway. For that reason, the story still hits all the notes it needs to for me, probably because I was so invested in it as a kid, but also because I see these scenes and just know they were trying really hard to make their vision work. And like Sonic himself, they were never gonna quit trying no matter what. The vision in question is just taking what Sonic had already been doing and ramping it up to next generation proportions, while also feeling like a sequel to what came before. The lore everyone knows has not been forgotten. Like when Tails realizes how much he's come to depend on Sonic, he has a flashback to the moment described in the Sonic 2 manual where he first met the Hedgehog, or how Amy reflects on the days of Sonic saving her from Metal Sonic in Sonic CD, or how the entire game is an expansion upon the lore stated in passing in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And with Angel Island back, we get to revisit Ice Cap from Sonic 3, and I like to think that Red Mountain and Sand Hill are homages to Lava Reef and Sandopolis Zone from Sonic and Knuckles. Actually, on that note, let's talk about that by diving into Knuckles' campaign.
Okay, let's go!
By booting up Knuckles' story, we get to witness the inciting incident of the whole game. One dark and stormy night, Dr. Eggman uses the Egg Carrier to destroy the Master Emerald, which unleashes chaos in the tutorial bubble. With the Master Emerald shattered, Angel Island falls into the ocean, as it's Knuckles' mission to find the pieces of the Master Emerald and restore it, bringing Angel Island back into the sky. Chaos makes for a good threatening force in the story. Build up and payoff is a time-honored method of telling stories and making for good bad guys. Chaos grows in strength with every Chaos Emerald he gets, leaving you in suspense of what his next evolution will look like, as the intro already promises how devastating his final form is going to be. He doesn't even need to talk to leave an impression on the player for all these reasons. When diving into the gameplay for Knuckles, the same problem as Tails comes up. His abilities would break Sonic's stages. To combat this, the designers gave Knuckles a more explorative playstyle. He must spend every stage looking for the pieces of the Master Emerald, and I think this accommodation is actually pretty effective. Tails was a total flop, but I think this was a good idea for Knuckles, as he instead needs to use his unique abilities in order to find the Emerald Shards, but there's still problems. Well, mainly one big problem. Knuckles' stages are far too easy, much like Tails'. The radar on the bottom of the screen is a generous help for finding the pieces, but if that's not enough for you, these hint bubbles will help you out. And by helping you out, it will just say, this way, and take you right to the piece you were looking for, which goes against the point of the playstyle. As if we were here to explore, reducing that aspect to Ash in a second is stupid. But still, Knuckles is still one of the best characters to play as in the game. Exploring areas Sonic wouldn't, like the cliffsides in Red Mountain, or the entire up area of sights and attractions in Casinopolis that are completely unreachable as Sonic. So overall, I'd say Knuckles' gameplay is good, but not great. And I'd like to see it get refined and improved, as the room is definitely there, unlike Tails. Back to the story. Sonic Adventure goes all in on the lore behind Knuckles the Echidna. In Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the North American manual said that Knuckles was the guardian of the Master Emerald as a result of the mysterious disappearance of the Echidna clan. But the Japanese manual went more in depth, stating that the Echidna clans want to take the power of the Master Emerald resulted in an incident that wiped most of the species out. Well, here we are in Sonic Adventure, and that backstory becomes the plot of the game. Chaos was sealed inside the Master Emerald for generations, as like I said, Eggman seeks to unleash Chaos once more. But the hint bubble that came out of the Emerald with Chaos will interrupt the heroes in their current mission to give them vague flashbacks to the Echidna clan when it was at its most prosperous. Here's an area of the storytelling that does get some flack, but I'm actually in favor of it. For Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and debatably Amy, I didn't think these flashbacks got in the way too much, as they came at moments I thought were pretty natural. Like how Sonic gets a flashback in Lost World, seeing a mural of perfect chaos on the wall. Each of the 6 characters have their own missions and objectives, but the narrative through-line of it all is how the leader of the Echidnas wasn't content with the power they had and wanted to use the Master Emerald to gain more. And Chaos, the guardian of the Emerald, and the Chow, a cute little race of blue guys, retaliated against the Echidnas and used the Emeralds to become unstoppable, destroying the once great civilization. Before the Echidna girl, Tikal sealed Chaos in the Master Emerald. Like, I just think it's so cool to have a whole game where a manual backstory becomes the threat of the new game, giving us insight into the world we didn't have before. You would wish Knuckles would react more to seeing his race of whom he's been the last for some time, and that the Echidnas would have more to say than worthless platitudes, but still. I really like the flashbacks and having to piece together what the story really is, as the first one we see in Sonic's campaign is from when Chaos was unleashed for the first time. but Tails will see Tikal reciting the prayer that commands the power of the Emerald, and Knuckles will see her begging her father not to go after the Emerald, and so on. But that's enough on the story right now. Sonic Adventure, like the classics before it, has been released a dozen times over the years. With a lot of options, that creates a difference in opinion on which version is the best one to play. A lot of folks swear by the Dreamcast original, however I would actually argue that this is one of the weaker versions of the game, mainly because it runs at 30 frames per second and does not allow the player to skip cutscenes, which becomes a drag when just trying to get through the story. Both Sonic Adventure games were given new life in the Nintendo GameCube, Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. I think both are improvements over the original Dreamcast releases. In the DX version of Adventure 1, I think it's fair to complain about the lighting differences between the original Sonic Adventure and the GameCube version. The DX models just have such a shiny look to it that the characters look more like plastic than anything else. However, I think the character models for Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy are a significant upgrade to the point where I can't say I mind. The DX version adds things like Game Gear ROMs and a mission mode instead of going in and improving things like actually matter, like how Eggman's model and animation in the original game was just god-awful, and that remains exactly the same on DX. The HD versions of Sonic Adventure released on the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Steam are a joke though. It's basically the same thing as the DX version, only in HD, which sounds fine, but I swear the control is looser on the PS3 than any other version, with all the same flaws of the cutscenes and animation still being present. They couldn't even be bothered to do the bare minimum of a 6th generation game remaster, putting the damn thing in widescreen. Instead, they just put this tacky border on top of it that looks hideous. Thankfully, this is where modders come in, and for the PC release, which saves it, making the PC version the definitive version of Sonic Adventure in my opinion. Seriously, these days, mods are the bread and butter of the Sonic community, or just fan work in general. I mean, what else is there to focus on? We have such droughts besides the excellent remake of Sonic 06 from Chaos X. Or just mods made for fun, like my guy North American Sonic and Sonic CD. Look at him go with that goofy smile and big ass haircut. With mods, you can get SADX in full widescreen and it looks great, especially with the scaled up HUD and UI elements. Modders have also transformed the PC version of SADX into a full recreation of the Dreamcast original. So if you want to play with the Dreamcast lighting and models only with SADX improvement like faster loading and music looping instead of restarting upon entering new areas, and skipping cutscenes, then the PC version is just the best. But like I said, I actually prefer the improved models from SADX, and thankfully I can get those models but with Dreamcast lighting and textures, and bam, that's the best SA1 experience in my opinion. Maybe the models don't hold up the best for the humans, but I think overall the visuals in Sonic Adventure did a really great job in 1998, as the stages and adventure fields still look passable. Stuff like the low poly egg carrier certainly stands out in my mind, but not to the point where I'd say the graphics of Adventure 1 haven't held up. They have aged, but not to a terrible extent. But if you want to know what I think has not aged a day, it's the excellent soundtrack they did for this game. Jun Sonoy and company were able to move past all the restrictions the Genesis had put on them back in the days of Sonic 3, and so we have this incredibly large and diverse, bombastic soundtrack that just confidently displays the energy the Sonic franchise had coming back into this revival. There's a ton of genre variety here with a multitude of different atmospheres captured excellently. This is not my favorite Sonic soundtrack, but it certainly is high on my list, as I'll always bop my head to the pieces of Speed Highway, Red Mountain, or the Sky Deck. As if I haven't hammered this in enough today, this game was Sonic finally making headway on the third dimension, a big revival for the franchise. They put a lot of thought into how their characters were going to be portrayed and perceived, which also applies to everything: writing, acting, gameplay, and the music. Vocal themes are no stranger to the Sonic series, they've been there since Sonic CD, but I've always thought that this game giving each character a vocal theme was an interesting choice. The game has a main theme, but then each character's credits is accompanied by a vocal theme with the kind of genre choice and instrumentation that complements that character's style and identity.
This fight is not for anybody. This is purely for myself. There is no way I'm gonna give up till the very end. I wanna fly high so I can reach the highest of all justice flows inside me. My duty is to save the flower from evil deterioration. Yeah.
He reminds me of parsley when he's standing there. Makes me wanna be his speciality.
They did take a go big or go home philosophy in regards to this whole game, and the soundtrack was no different. Speaking of how characters are going to be portrayed, that's another thing I think I'm going to say I appreciate about Sonic Adventure 1. And that seems to be a thing that's happening a lot today. I like this game, what can I say? Sonic Adventure makes for an important landmark in Sonic history. I already talked about fusing the name difference of Dr. Eggman between regions, but now the entire cast as we knew them have had a design shift. Character artist from Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic R, Yuji Uekawa, had the task of modernizing the appearance of the cast, adding more detail by making them all taller and with more detailed eyes and shoes. What I think is really important about the design change is just how universal it was. Before this point we had the Japanese Sonic, the American Sonic, the European Sonic, but now in each and every region Sonic was just Sonic, with this iconic pose in the box art. What I love about this is how it really is just the exact same silhouette for Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, but the characters themselves just been modernized, with Dr. Eggman being modernized to look more militaristic, fitting for his larger ambitions. Despite how much of a talking point it is for this game that the designs got changed, I think it's just what we already had, but better and more expressive. Yuji Uekawa's art style has always been my favorite aesthetic for Sonic, and that all dates back to this game. It just stands out from the crowd with these thick black outlines around all the lines and the distinct shading that sparks the imagination of its audience, or at least it did me. The game also made Amy the iconic character she was, taking her Sonic but pink and with a skirt look into the immediately recognizable Amy we have today. Which, by the way, a couple of folks have asked about this in the comments of my classic Sonic video ever since I changed the thumbnail. That North American Amy art is indeed not an original Greg Martin piece like Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik were. It is instead a commission I got from Tyler McGrath, an incredible artist on Twitter who has recreated a plethora of Sonic art styles, Greg Martin's being one of them. This is not a paid promotion, by the way, I just wanted to shout out great work when I saw it. But speaking of Amy,
It's my turn now.
Amy's story. Here's where the gameplay takes a different turn. Having as many characters as possible in your 3D platformer was a big deal in the late 90s and early 2000s, and Sonic Adventure was no different. Like I just reflected, I don't think Amy was really a character that stood out much in the classic era. Her biggest role was Sonic CD, where she was barely even in it and easy to miss. The design didn't help, but this game basically took the concept of Amy and made something more memorable out of it. She still loves Sonic, but is also just a loyal and principled person, not afraid to speak her mind in any given situation. Like standing up to E102 Gamma when he tries to take the bird she's protecting away from her. Or when she befriends Gamma, she stops Sonic from hurting Gamma because she really believes this robot has something different about him than the other ones. With her being such a memorable character, it's easy to see how Amy finally went beyond spin-off fodder and became a mainstay member of the game cast. The basic premise of Amy's story is that she meets a bird fleeing from Eggman as he uses flickies to power his robots like he did in the classic games. But this flicky is also different as it houses a Chaos Emerald, which Eggman of course needs to fully power Chaos. So Amy's intent to protect this bird from E100 Zero, who chases the duo throughout Amy's 3 stages: Twinkle Park, Hot Shelter, and the final egg. I said Tails was the second worst campaign in the game, and yes, that means I think Amy is actually better than Tails. I think Tails is more fundamentally fun to play as than Amy, but Amy's stages are just more involved as you have to avoid Zero and solve puzzles. Where Amy's levels fail is in the fact that these puzzles could be solved by a 2-year-old and Zero is not a threat in the least bit. So like Knuckles, I don't think it's a bad idea, it's just an execution that it's just meh. Amy's playthrough is also one of the ones that's most guilty of it being more cutscenes and adventure field roaming than playing the stages, which is why her campaign's still not that good overall, but fine, I guess. Her acrobatics are fun to use, but still I think they could have been more integrated as she can't really do anything from a standstill. Her controls are still solid though, and I think the parts where she gets unique level segments like Hot Shelter or the Hall of Mirrors in Twinkle Park are really cool. But the stale gameplay formula and Amy's very lacking acceleration and minimal platforming to account for that just leaves me with a thumbs down for Amy, but still, it's not terrible.
Preparation complete.
E102 Gamma is an interesting case. Here we have a brand new character who we see the entire life story of. Born into the E series of robots, who at this point consists of E100 Zero, E101 Beta, E102 Gamma, E103 Delta, E104 Epsilon, and E105 Zeta. Gamma takes any orders from Dr. Robotnik without question, but as a robot is actually put off by Beta, a robot Eggman established as his older brother, being used for scrap parts in this room. Or when Dr. Eggman just banishes Delta, Epsilon, and Zeta for bringing the wrong frog. When Amy reaches through to Gamma, he manages to escape the egg carrier, thus beginning his true mission, finding the remaining members of the E series and destroying them so that he can free the animals trapped inside. I just think it's a really great idea to bring this small detail that's been there since Sonic 1 and make it a plot point, freeing animals from being robots. As Gamma even wonders what he's going to do with himself as he's no different. ending with a brawl between Beta and Gamma that results in the death of Gamma as we knew him, but freeing the bird trapped inside. The animal trapped inside Beta is also released as we get to see that those two are the parents of the bird that Amy was taking care of. It's a great little mini-story inside the larger one. But anyway, Gamma is the third best playstyle in the game, as you run around the areas blowing up everything in sight with your laser gun. Gamma feels just right when it comes to control and handling, and his stages are short enough to be enjoyable to play while not overstaying their welcome like Amy or being undercooked like Tails. Targeting is automatic, you just hold down the button, lock onto as many targets as you can, and watch the sparks fly. To incentivize combat, each Gamma stage is under a time limit, and you must destroy enemies in chains to get more time. As far as a side gimmick in a Sonic game is concerned, I think this was fairly well done. We again just suffer from the problem that Gamma's gameplay is really easy, not requiring much from the player in order to do well at. Like, I think the time limit is a good idea, but it's only the hot shelter where it ever feels important. Otherwise, you can probably beat the rest of the levels before the time even comes. Just look at these boss fights. So with that said, I'll put Gamma in the same camp as Knuckles. A good idea in need of improvement, leaving only the final campaign of the 6.
Hold on, Froggy, I'm coming!
Big the Cat, no holds barred, is one of the worst parts of any Sonic game ever. The idea here is that Big is a total outsider to the story, but his friend Froggy has been a target of Chaos, as Chaos can get his tail back by absorbing Froggy. So Big needs to track Froggy down and fish for him, but then keeps losing him in comedic fashion, which is something this game never gets right. The premise and character are just whatever, but Big's gameplay, well, frankly, it sucks. You cast the lure into the water, and the frog will barely respond, and when he does, you have to hope and pray he doesn't let go as you mash the buttons and flail the analog stick like a maniac. The Sega Dreamcast was an impressive display of water, which is why Chaos is a water god, and why there's a whole gameplay style based on fishing, but this shit was just barely playable. It also drags on for an eternity. Like, Amy only had 3 stages, but Big has 4, where it's the same routine over and over and over and over. This story was the reason it took me a long time to beat Sonic Adventure as a kid. I mean, the other campaigns are straightforward enough to where I beat them all when I was a kid, but then Big was a massive roadblock that took a lot longer because the character, whose goal is arguably the simplest, fish for the damn frog, is the hardest in the game. The worst part is that gameplay like this does not make itself. Sonic games have always suffered from rushed production cycles, some faring better than others in the final product. But even though I think Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Gamma are all well above playable, the extra time they went into programming Big's character, who doesn't even control well, giving him 3 objectives per stage, making the AI for these fish, designing extra segments of Emerald Coast and Ice Cap for Big, sections that Sonic will never see, is just development time that could have made these other playable characters far more fun to play, and way more polished. Please, if you have all the Big strats figured out, by all means, go nuts. Just don't tell me. I don't actually care. I don't want to be good at Big. I just never want to play this tedious gameplay again. Normally when I play SA1, I just load an earlier save file for the final story after clearing the other 5 so I can just avoid this garbage full stop. But since this is a review, I figured that couldn't be done, played it again. I hate it, moving on. So while we just listed a bunch of things that don't work about Sonic Adventure, that's the thing I love about the game so much. This game to me feels like Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but bigger, with these explosive set pieces going by at depth-defying speed. Like how Sonic 3 had moments Sonic 1 could only dream of, which already had moments Mario 1 could only dream of. Not everything in this game works. Like I've said, Tails, Amy, Big, and parts of Knuckles and Gamma's campaigns, the cutscenes, the pacing, all that, it's all very flawed. Sonic 3 and Knuckles was starting to try the whole multiple stories angle as Knuckles' playthrough took place after Sonic's, with his own final battle and ending, but Sonic Adventure is just trying to build on that immensely. Sonic Adventure does have its lows, but that attempt to be the biggest and boldest Sonic game yet has earned my respect. Especially since this game isn't even over yet. This game is packed with extra content, whether it be raising Chow in the Chow Garden, exploring the hub for emblems, playing the mission mode from SADX, or the real meat and potatoes of the post-game, the trial mode. Beating a character's level in the story mode is only the C mission, and every single stage for all 6 characters have B and A missions. B missions involve collecting a certain amount of rings before clearing the level for Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Gamma, or not using any hint bubbles for Knuckles. As the A mission requires you to clear the stage with a really good time, or in Tails' diabolical case, you must defeat a faster Sonic. I've played this game so much over the years that the B and A missions that don't have anything to do with Big's horrific gameplay don't offer me much of a challenge, but for Sonic, Knuckles, and Gamma, the best parts of the game, it can be fun. Especially getting the best time of Sonic's levels, that will never not be a joy. But if there's one thing that really gets on my nerves during these missions, is that there's a lot of forced replaying of stages included. Like the C mission of Emerald Coast is Sonic is to save Tails, the B mission is to have 50 rings, and the A mission is to do it in 2 minutes. I'm so good at the game that I can do all 3 of these things in one run, but I instead have to play it 3 times if I want to get the emblems that acknowledge that effort, which I thought sucked. You also wouldn't catch me playing these minigames like the boss attack mode or Sky Chase if my life depended on it. But still, like I have been saying the whole time, it's that effort to put as much content as possible on that Dreamcast disc that gets all the praise in the world from me. But we aren't done yet though, as beating the 6 campaigns will unlock the final story, Super Sonic's story. Sonic has defeated Dr. Eggman, Tails has overcome his insecurities, Knuckles has restored Master Emerald and defeated Chaos 6 as the Egg Carrier, Amy reunited the bird with its parents, Gamma freed the E-Series from the robotic shells, and Big has saved Froggy and returned to a life of simplicity. All the stories of each individual character are complete, hence why they each came with credit scenes. Ultimately, playing through all 6 stories and getting the true ending is a bonus, but let's look at it. In his defeat, Eggman actually finds Chaos and Knuckles on Angel Island with 6 of the Chaos Emeralds. Chaos has been a background threat being led by Dr. Eggman the whole time, but now Chaos is done playing around as he steals the 6 Chaos Emeralds, defeating Eggman and Knuckles as Sonic and Tails have to find the last emerald that was on board the Tornado 2 before it's too late. Sonic is given one last flashback to the past to see what really happened. Tikal was unable to stop the ambitions of her tribe as they stampeded past her and the Chow, with Chaos becoming perfect chaos and destroying everything. Now this was basically what you could infer from the earlier flashbacks, but still, it's an intense image to have baby Chow corpses lying amongst the scene. After that, Chaos steals the last emerald and finally unleashes his full rage upon the world. Chaos has taken Dr. Eggman's spot as the final boss for the first time in a Sonic game, making him a memorable antagonist, simply obeying Dr. Eggman to get the emeralds in order to fulfill his real plan of destroying the world as retaliation for what the Echidnas did. Chaos was on a rampage, and Tikal stealing him the Master Emerald for ages only bottled that anger up, and that's finally being set free. It's a great setup for the climax of the game, although I do have problems with the last story. It does feel kind of rushed, as Eggman just shows up with the Egg Carrier 2 in case something like this happened. Although, they would not have had to come up with that contrivance if they hadn't already blown up the first Egg Carrier without explaining it to begin with. This plotline doesn't even go anywhere, so it was pointless at the end of the day. Then the emeralds are discarded by Chaos, and Sonic's friends all just show up with them when this could have been a good setup to play as each of these characters again. Like maybe Tails would race a Chow enemy for an emerald, Amy and Gamma's bird would avoid one for an emerald, Big would fish for the lost emerald, and Knuckles would have a radar to get the rest of them. It's not a big change, but still I think the last story would feel less rushed if there was some more integration of the other characters. Let's talk about the good stuff. Tikal reveals herself to be the hint bubble that's been following us around. We see her leave the Master Emerald alongside Chaos at the start of the story in Knuckles' campaign. I think her role in it makes enough sense to me. I mean, Knuckles is the last Echidna, he needs to know Chaos' story, and if Tikal followed Chaos, she would surely come to see that Sonic and his other friends are trying to stop Chaos as well, and so they'd need to know what they're dealing with too. Tikal wants to seal Chaos in the Master Emerald again, thinking it's the only way to end this. What I think is a good character moment. Sonic actually thinks this wouldn't work because that would end the current conflict, yes, but it won't stop the same thing from happening again later. No. Instead, Sonic thinks the only way to stop Chaos for good is to beat him in his own game. The Doomsday Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles can eat its heart out because now we have the most epic final boss fight in a Sonic game thus far, one that's been building up since the very beginning of the game as Sonic faced Chaos Zero at the start of his campaign. Ending with Super Sonic blasting at light speed over the water as he takes the fight right to perfect chaos with the intent to end this once and for all. And to accompany this, we have the main theme, Open Your Heart by Crush 40, blasting in the background.
Can't hold on much longer. I will never let go. I know it's a one-way track. Tell me now how long this will last. I'm not gonna think this way. Nor will I count on others. Close my eyes and feel it burn. Now I see what I gotta do. Open your heart, it's gonna be alright. Yeah.
Ultimately, the god of destruction, Chaos, really is just a creature that wanted to protect its own against the attacking Echidnas, and while the damage Chaos has done cannot be undone, Sonic bringing chaos back to normal, and the sight of the Chow that continued to prosper generations later, successfully de-escalates the situation, allowing Chaos and Tikal to finally rise into the afterlife.
Chaos has changed again, this time for the better.
Yeah! Super Sonic must have neutralized it, so it's nice again.
And that's basically it. When another scheme failed, Dr. Eggman takes off, Tails reflects an entire city destroyed with,
All's well that ends well, right?
and Sonic, with the day saved, takes off for the next mission, whatever that may be, ending Sonic Adventure. Like I said at the top of the video, Sonic Adventure is hardly a game that needs introduction or discussion. I'm sure someone has said everything I just said verbatim in plenty of other videos on YouTube, but like I said, this is my Sonic Retrospective, and I have to talk about this landmark title in the history of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. Sonic Adventure is a game I really love, and while it's far from perfect, and it's certainly not a game that would come to mind if you ask me about my favorite games, or even favorite Sonic games, but it's one that gives me a near-perfect 3D Sonic transition with endlessly replayable levels, an unforgettable story, and other gameplay mechanics that are at worst god-awful, but at best, pretty alright. But the real meat and potatoes of Sonic Adventure is hardly something I could ever say anything worse about other than it's really good. Yeah, I do think Sonic 3 and Knuckles is a better game for sure. In fact, I think Sonic 1 and 2 are probably better games as well. But like I said, Sonic Adventure is unforgettable. It's a hard game to have your take simply be meh. It dared to be bold, and that inspired nothing short of strong opinions one way or another. For me, Sonic Adventure took what made Sonic so great and continued to expand upon it. It didn't always work, but when it did, it really knocked it out of the park. At the time of release, this was most certainly one of the best Sonic games ever made, easily getting an automatic spot in the top 5 at least. But with that said, I love Sonic Adventure and will surely be revisiting it countless times in the future. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed this look at Sonic Adventure, and I also hope you guys stick around as I'm not going to make you wait terribly long for the Adventure era videos. But in the meantime, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.